Hello. The topic of today is the crossing point. Once upon a time, my teacher stated on suffering. We can say in an absolute way that the remedy always goes together with the trouble. We could say that the cure for every suffering coexists with the suffering. Instead of seeing an unnecessary or stupid trouble, as people generally think, you see that the progress of the evolution which made the suffering necessary, the cause and the goal of the suffering, achieved the desired result. And at the same time, the suffering is cured for those who can open up and receive. The three things, the suffering as a means of progress, the progress and the cure of the suffering, are coexistent, simultaneous, meaning that they do not follow one another, they take place at the same time. If and when there is the necessary aspiration and opening, the remedy is absorbed at the same time, and the effect is total, complete, the transformation, along with the action necessary to obtain it. And at the same time, the cure of the false sensation caused by the resistance. And the suffering is replaced by something unknown on this earth, but which has to do with joy, ease, trust, and security. It's a super sensation, in perfect peace, and clearly the only thing that can be eternal. This analysis expresses imperfectly what we could call the content of the Ananda. Unquote. Ananda is the Sanskrit word for bliss. 1984 colony. After the abandonment of my house by my wife on my own land and its partial destruction, where I had been living for the last 7 years, I tried to revert back in my mind to common sense. I started with first thing first, like postponing business trips to the north, where I was supposed to meet Indian partners who knew nothing about what had taken place in Germany. A process that in its consequence amounted to a radical change both in my professional field as well as in my personal life. Or like, there was a need to find an architect for the broken house, preferably an architect from the colony. But it appeared that they all refused. On the outside, their major excuse, they said, was a lack of security. Consequently, I had to find a local architect and contractor from the next village. And I did find one. So the work started soon. First, the renovation of the roof came, as its wooden beams were completely eaten up by the termites. Meanwhile, there was a confrontation with my wife. We fixed an appointment, and I met her in our second, newly constructed and renovated house at the colony near the center of it. Within 5 minutes, she stated that her friends from the colony were ready to beat me up if I ever came back to her house. She now claimed was hers alone. And I never would see my children again unless fixed by a court of law. So the divorce was next, and I filed it. to rebuild my old house practically meant to completely renew it. Besides the roof, since the walls had to be taken down as well, as I soon found out, and on top of it also the foundation that had to be changed from temporary to permanent, reinforcing it with steel and concrete. Soon my place looked like a packed-up construction site. I kept the old shape, the size and the space of the original main room for the sake of energy coherence and memory. But it would be covered with a thick layer of concrete ceiling, creating a beautiful terrace on top of it, as well as an extra sleeping room for the inevitable hurricanes of the future. After the terrace of my house was constructed, I decided to give myself some time to reflect on everything. Nothing I was doing really made sense. Looking at the normal reality of my outer life, I could not get but disgusted. No question that it was me who had caused all of this. I felt again that basically something was wrong with me. Somewhere deep in my substance, there had to be an essential flaw. And I had known this since my early childhood. Human beings, without their aspiration towards the divine, they say, were nothing much than bugs crawling in the mud. I could not judge anything about anybody else, but so far as I was concerned, the description fitted. I always had known deep inside, in spite of all my efforts to realize the opposite, that I was a failure. A wrong construction. My nature was, and so was my body. Looking at my life and myself till this point of time, I could not see much of a progress. True, I had joined the colony, mainly for the purpose of improving myself and the world, and I was struggling since years, but everything seemed to be falling back into old patterns, into the old horrible ways, right into the mud of the past. And the period of this was obvious. The hidden default in my system, this apparent mistake of nature in my body and mind, became clearly visible in the results of the actions I did, in the creations of my life. I could not but to be experiencing. The break-up of my family was the latest. Not for 1 second in my worst nightmare I ever would have accepted the idea of any separation between me and my children. But what I had created, together with my ex-wife, was the opposite of what I wanted to have. For the kids, it was a terrible situation. It is always the children who suffer most when a family breaks up. And it is always the children who need most of the love and care parents can give. So, when I had decided to have children and a wife after staying for years in the colony single, it was done with the clear and strong intention to give the kids not only all they needed, but a real home and parents they could be proud of, who supported them in their growth, inner and outer, more than people normally manage to give. This had been one of my strongest intentions and motivations for creating my own family. Now, what I was facing was the opposite reality, and there appeared to be no way out. I remembered also similar situations in my life before. Sometimes they had been created by my careless judgments or negligence, but more than often even by a strange inclination to take excessive risks. At times it had been deliberate decisions and consequent act causing trouble. They had pushed my outer life into destructive ways, even affecting my body. I always have had choices, but consciously chosen the bad ones. Why? In order to prove that I could manage anything? Self-sabotaging tendencies had been part of my life, and with serious consequences for my health. It seemed with one part I wanted to experience something new, but actually causing the most adverse conditions of the past. In order to achieve some clarity at that point of my reflections, I once more started to record systematically the events of my life and the order of the correspondent actions. I allow myself to openly consider all of the facts, and the first memory which came up was one of my father's favorite statements. I can see that you are a failure. You are a weak person. You have no will of your own. I indeed always had been convinced being a failure. But was this my fault? Why had I been made this way? Whosoever had done it, nature, the world, destiny, some gods, I had not been asked when they created me. And all the positive forces in this universe, if there were any, could not help me in this. They apparently were powerless, or at least did not interfere in the creation of such a freak of nature as I apparently was. So I had good reasons not to like myself and to detest my body. Period. Could I ever change this? Would the gods, if they existed, change it? I had my doubts. So when the break-up with my wife happened, I was once more convinced that some dark force in my life had succeeded. And even in my social environment, observing other people, seeing what was happening within and with the colony, or in the outside world, similar pictures appeared. 11 September 2017, colony, 33 years later. There was a dream of the night. I was chasing out of my compound big white bullocks from the village. I was helped by some kids from Indian residents who were now living at my place. One of the boys was a mixture between European and Indian. He had blonde hair but brown skin. I had a strong connection to him. Back 1984. During the reconstruction of my house, 30 years before the dream, I was using the nights for intense exercises and meditations that lasted for hours. I wrote, interesting experiences, but nothing really unusual or out of this world. It is obvious that once more I have to increase the intensity of my tapasya. This will not interfere with the periods I am taking care of my children. By now they stay with me at least each second weekend, due to the latest agreement with their mother. But then, in one of meditations, I received an extraordinary inner experience. It was one of those which change everything. I further wrote, I access and enter a world I have not known existed. It is a wonderful reality, full of beauty and light, full of joy and love and peace. Whatever I have been aspiring for since my childhood, somehow now is therefore real and accessible to me. Further, I'm sucking it in like the nectar of immortality, rejoicing and surrendering and prostrating in front of the miracle of this universe. When I come back to my normal senses, I am unable to do anything but to think of it and remembering it. Never in my life have I ever experienced anything like this. I'm feeling deep gratitude. I'm blessed. From this moment on, I want to do only one thing, to go back there and to have it again. The outer normal world disappears in a fog of darkness. Daily life becomes meaningless for me. I count the hours until I can submerge myself into heaven again, and nothing else interests me anymore. I'm searching for it desperately, putting all my energy, attention, and strength into the pursuit of this wonderful reality that surpasses all expectations, imaginations, and dreams. Nothing else counts. Nothing in daily life, nor in its routine, nor works in it. They have become meaningless burdens. I cease eating regularly. I stop attending the still existing shop in town, and I even reduce my time with the kids. They anyway seem to be quite happy with the way they are living without me. And why would I interfere in this? The more I get involved into this heaven beyond, full of light and wonder, the less I care about the normal reality and my body. I realize that the concept of the physical world as an illusion is not only a mental idea, but corresponds to the truth. The outer world is nothing but ignorance, falsehood, and darkness, and the sooner I will get out of it, the better. I myself, my body, and me are nothing but a part of a gigantic lie, and the only solution is to leave them as soon as possible. So I have reached the final conclusion to leave my body for good. The story of the Zauberberg by Thomas Mann has come up, or the memory how American indigenous people were handling the process when it was about time for them to leave for a better world. These ideas fascinate me. I will never commit a fast and violent suicide though, but instead I will choose a slow withdrawing from the outer reality and life. Such a solution will involve an inner process and give me time and opportunity to integrate whatever is coming up. This is what I am to do. What is waiting behind the curtain is the only real thing. There is no reason in this world left to continue my existence in illusion and darkness. Life in general has no attraction left to me, as I am, a senseless product of nature with severe defects. Under no circumstances will I miss this most incredible opportunity in my life to get out I ever could have dreamt of. I am blessed and chosen. And the universe supported me. I have withdrawn from the consultancy. We have sold both of the shops, and even my wife and my children have left me. All major obligations and commitments are being removed from my responsibility. Now, in 2024, 40 years later, I asked the Tarot for a comment on my situation at that time. I'm being told, the suffering of the past created the consequence experiences along with resulting clarity. All of this was pushing you to strongly move forward, irrespectively of mental considerations or consequences. You were and will be connected to the Spirit. What helped you in the past was the support of the Divine Mother and the nature of this universe, where one of its major governing forces is causality. What will help you also in the future is the direct, manifested guidance of the Supreme conveyed to you by intuition. The suffering, the remedy, and the cure have taken place. Thanks and namaste.